I've always been told family is supposed to have your back. But what do you do when your biggest enemy is sitting across from you at the dinner table every holiday? That's what it feels like with my cousin Hannah. We grew up close, inseparable, even. Our moms are twins, so we were always lumped together as double trouble. But as we got older, the cracks started to show. Hannah was naturally gifted at everything: school, sports, making friends. I, on the other hand, had to work twice as hard just to keep up. Somehow, no matter how much I achieved, Hannah's shadow loomed over me. Still, when I got engaged to Ethan, I tried to push those feelings aside. This was my time to shine, I thought. Ethan and I were deeply in love, and I couldn't wait to start our lives together. But from the moment I announced the engagement, Hannah found ways to worm herself into the spotlight. "You're engaged?" "Wow," she said when I told her. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "You and Ethan are such a cute couple." I should have seen it coming then. Hannah has this way of turning compliments into something else, like she's giving you a gift but taking something bigger in return. I laughed it off at the time, telling myself I was reading too much into it. Things got worse when I started planning the wedding. Hannah seemed eager to help, which at first I thought was sweet. She offered to come to vendor meetings, help with the decorations, even pick out my dress. But something always felt off. When we went dress shopping, she kept pulling dresses off the racks for herself. "Oh my God, imagine if this was my wedding," she said, holding a sleek, sparkly gown against herself in the mirror. "I'd kill it in this. You know we're here for my dress, right?" I joked, trying to keep things light. "Of course," she replied, grinning. "But a girl can dream." Her remarks started piling up, like tiny pricks I couldn't ignore. "Are you sure you want an outdoor wedding? The heat can be brutal. That cake flavor is so safe. Don't you want something people will remember?" Ethan's such a chill guy. It's crazy he's settling down already. Then came the wedding day. Hannah arrived in a skin-tight champagne-colored dress that might as well have been white. She strutted down the aisle ahead of the bridesmaids, whispering to guests about how beautiful she felt. During the reception, she grabbed the microphone and gave an impromptu speech. "I just want to say how happy I am for Ethan," she began, her voice dripping with charm. "We've been close for years, and it's been so amazing watching him find someone who really makes sense for him. You know, back in the day, everyone thought we'd end up together, but I guess life has its surprises." My jaw hit the floor. Ethan froze beside me, his smile plastered on for the sake of the crowd. My parents clapped awkwardly, thinking it was just a joke, but I could see right through her. She wasn't joking. She was staking her claim. That night, Ethan told me he didn't want her in our lives anymore. "She's trying to make this about her," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "We don't need this kind of drama." I agreed, but cutting Hannah out was easier said than done. She was family, and every time I tried to put distance between us, she found a way to claw back in. And then, 6 months later, she crossed a line I never thought she'd dare to. For a while after the wedding, things calmed down. Or at least, I thought they had. Hannah stopped showing up to family gatherings uninvited and didn't call or text me as much. I chalked it up to her finally realizing she'd pushed too far. Maybe, just maybe, she'd gotten the hint. Then, one Saturday morning, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Hannah standing there, all smiles, holding a coffee in one hand and a gift bag in the other. "Hey, cuz," she chirped, breezing past me into the house like she hadn't just spent months ignoring me. "Hannah, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by. I even brought you your favorite coffee." "Ethan around?" It was subtle, but there it was, the way she said his name. Light, casual, but with an edge, like she was testing the waters. "He's running errands," I replied, keeping my tone cool. She stayed for over an hour, making herself at home on my couch, flipping through wedding photos on my coffee table, and dropping little comments that set me on edge. "Wow, Ethan looks so handsome in this picture," she said, holding up a photo from the reception. "You're lucky I didn't snatch him up first." I laughed it off, but inside, something twisted. Over the next few weeks, Hannah started showing up more often. She'd drop by unannounced with flimsy excuses, like she was returning something she borrowed months ago or just happened to be nearby. She'd linger, always finding ways to bring Ethan into the conversation. You know, she said one evening while Ethan was cooking dinner, Ethan and I used to talk about going to Europe together. Remember that, Ethan? Before you two started dating? Ethan looked at her like she was crazy. What? That never happened. Hannah laughed. Oh, maybe I'm mixing it up. But still, you and I always did have the best conversations. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. That Hannah wasn't a threat, that she was just being her usual self, annoying, but harmless. But then, Ethan sat me down one night and dropped a bombshell. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice heavy. It's about Hannah. I froze. What about her? She told me she has feelings for me. The room tilted. I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh and say he was joking. But he didn't. She what? I managed to choke out. She said she thinks we're soulmates, he continued, shaking his head like he couldn't believe the words coming out of his own mouth. That she's always had feelings for me but never acted on them because you're her cousin. She said I made a mistake marrying you, and that I deserve someone who understands me better. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What did you say to her? I told her she was out of her mind, he said firmly. I told her I love you and that she needs to stop this nonsense. But even as he reassured me, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Hannah wasn't the type to give up so easily. Sure enough, the very next day, I got a phone call from my mom. Honey, she began, her tone hesitant. I just got off the phone with Hannah. She's very upset. She says you've been rude to her lately, and Ethan has been ignoring her. Mom, you have no idea what's going on, I snapped. I told her everything, about the wedding speech, the uninvited visits, and now her so-called confession to Ethan. Oh, I'm sure she didn't mean it like that, my mom said, brushing it off. You know how Hannah is. She can be a little over the top, but she has a good heart. A good heart? I repeated, incredulous. Mom, she tried to sabotage my marriage. My mom sighed. I think you're overreacting. You should try talking to her and sorting this out. I hung up, shaking with anger. It was clear I couldn't rely on my family to handle this. I'd have to deal with Hannah myself. And so, the next time she showed up uninvited, I confronted her. Why are you doing this, Hannah? I demanded. Doing what? She said, all wide-eyed innocence. You know what? Showing up here unannounced, confessing your feelings to my husband, trying to weasel your way into our lives. She smirked, and for the first time, she dropped the act. What can I say? Maybe Ethan just deserves someone who truly appreciates him. That was it. I kicked her out of my house and told her she was no longer welcome in our lives. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because Hannah wasn't just trying to ruin my marriage. She was trying to replace me. The weeks that followed were some of the most stressful of my life. Hannah might not have been physically showing up at my house anymore, but her presence lingered like a bad smell. She started reaching out to Ethan directly, texting him under the guise of clearing the air. At first, he ignored her, but she became relentless. One night, Ethan handed me his phone, his face tense. You need to see this, he said. I scrolled through a string of messages from Hannah. I'm sorry if I made things awkward. I just care about you so much, Ethan. I hope we can still be friends. I've been thinking about what I said, and I know it was brave of me to admit how I feel. I just hope you'll take the time to really think about it too. You're not happy with her, Ethan. I can see it. You don't have to settle. I can give you the life you deserve. The last message sent a chill down my spine. When you realize I'm right, you know where to find me. She's unhinged, I said, my voice shaking. Ethan nodded. I'm blocking her. She's crossed the line. True to his word, he blocked her number and all her social media accounts that night. I thought that would be the end of it, but I underestimated just how far Hannah was willing to go. About a month later, my cousin Alice reached out to me. She and Hannah were never particularly close, but they were still friendly, and Alice had apparently run into Hannah at a coffee shop. She was different, Alice told me over the phone. She couldn't stop talking about you and Ethan. She made it sound like you guys were having problems. What kind of problems? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Alice hesitated. She said Ethan's been confiding in her, that he told her he's unhappy and feels trapped. She even said he's been staying over at her place sometimes. I nearly dropped the phone. That's a complete lie. Ethan hasn't spoken to her in weeks, let alone gone anywhere near her place. I figured, Alice said quickly. But she sounded so convincing, and she said it so casually, like it was just common knowledge. I thought you should know. After I hung up, I told Ethan what Alice had said. He was furious. She's trying to smear me now? This has gone too far. We decided to confront her once and for all. The opportunity came sooner than we expected. My aunt was hosting a family dinner the following weekend, and of course, Hannah would be there. I wasn't looking forward to it, but Ethan and I agreed we couldn't keep letting her spin her lies unchecked. The moment we walked into my aunt's house, I spotted Hannah holding court in the kitchen. She was laughing with a group of cousins, looking completely unbothered. When she saw us, her smile faltered for a split second, but then she recovered, waving cheerfully. "Hey, you too," she called out, as if nothing had happened. Ethan didn't waste any time. "Can we talk?" "In private." Hannah raised an eyebrow, but followed us to a quiet corner of the house. The moment we were alone, Ethan let her have it. "You need to stop this," he said, his voice cold. "The texts, the lies, all of it. It's disgusting, Hannah." Hannah blinked, playing innocent. "What lies? What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I snapped. "Telling people Ethan's unhappy, that he's staying with you? Are you out of your mind?" Hannah's expression shifted, her mask slipping for just a moment. There was a flash of something ugly in her eyes, jealousy, hatred, desperation, but she quickly replaced it with her usual smirk. "Well, if people are talking, maybe there's a reason for it," she said, her tone sugary sweet. "Maybe it's because you're not giving him what he needs." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now? You're actually trying to justify this?" Hannah shrugged. "I'm just saying if the shoe fits." Ethan stepped forward, his voice dangerously calm. "Hannah, this is the last time I'm going to say this. Stay away from us. If you don't, I'll make sure the entire family knows exactly what you've been doing." Hannah's smirk wavered, but she held her ground. "Fine," she said, "but don't come crying to me when things fall apart." We left the dinner early, and for a while, it seemed like our confrontation had worked. Hannah didn't reach out, and the rumors she'd been spreading died down. But just when I thought we were finally free of her, she pulled her most shocking stunt yet. A week later, Ethan came home from work, his face pale. "You're not going to believe this," he said, holding up an envelope. Inside was a stack of photos, grainy, clearly taken without our knowledge. They showed Ethan and me in various places, at the park, at a restaurant, even in our own backyard. But in every photo, someone had circled Ethan's face in red ink, with the words, "He's mine," scrawled across them. Hannah wasn't just trying to steal my husband anymore. She was stalking us. Ethan and I stared at the photos in silence, the reality sinking in like a lead weight. It was one thing to deal with Hannah's petty manipulations and lies, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. She wasn't just spreading rumors or meddling in our lives. She was watching us, tracking us. "She's completely unhinged," Ethan finally said, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. "This is dangerous. We need to do something." He was right, but I didn't even know where to start. Part of me wanted to throw the photos into the trash and pretend they didn't exist. But another part of me, the rational part, knew that this was serious. "We need to call the police," I said, my voice trembling. Ethan hesitated. "Do you think they'll even do anything? I mean, she hasn't technically threatened us." "She's stalking us, Ethan," I snapped, the fear bubbling up into anger. "What more do you need?" He nodded, pulling me into a hug. "Okay, we'll report it." The next day, we went to the police station with the envelope of photos. The officer we spoke to was calm but firm. "This is definitely cause for concern," he said after we explained the situation. "Stalking is a serious offense, especially when there's a history of harassment like this. Do you have any other evidence of her behavior?" I handed over screenshots of the texts she'd sent Ethan, as well as messages she'd sent me over the years, some passive-aggressive, others outright hostile. "She's my cousin," I said, my voice breaking. "I never thought it would get this far." The officer nodded sympathetically. "Family disputes can escalate quickly, but this is beyond that. We'll file a report and issue a warning for her to cease all contact. If she continues, we'll have grounds to press charges." For a while, it seemed like the warning worked. Hannah stopped texting, stopped showing up, and, as far as we could tell, stopped stalking us. Ethan and I began to feel like we could finally breathe again. But then, a month later, the other shoe dropped. It was a Saturday morning when the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, while Ethan was in the backyard mowing the lawn. Assuming it was a delivery, I went to answer it without much thought. Standing on the porch was my aunt, Hannah's mother. "Aunt Linda," I said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" She looked uncomfortable, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. "Can I come in? We need to talk." I let her in, my stomach tightening. The last time we'd spoken was at the family dinner where we confronted Hannah. "I wanted to talk to you before things got out of hand," she began, sitting stiffly on the couch. "Hannah told me what's been going on between you two. She said you've been spreading lies about her." "Excuse me?" I said, my voice rising. "What lies?" "She's the one who's been stalking us." Aunt Linda held up a hand. "I'm not here to take sides. I just want to understand. Hannah's been saying she's been misunderstood and that you've been trying to turn the family against her. She's not doing well, emotionally." I stared at her, incredulous. "She's not doing well?" "Aunt Linda, she sent us stalker photos and circled Ethan's face like some kind of obsessed maniac. And she told Ethan she's in love with him. How is that misunderstood?" "She admitted to sending the photos," Aunt Linda said quietly. "She said she was just trying to get your attention, to make you see how unhappy Ethan is. She thought it would help." I could barely believe what I was hearing. Help? Help who? Because it sure wasn't us. Aunt Linda sighed, looking more tired than I'd ever seen her. "I'm not saying what she did was right. I'm just saying she needs help. Professional help. I was hoping you might reconsider the police report. If this escalates, it could ruin her life." "She's ruining our lives," I shot back. "I can't just pretend this didn't happen." Before Aunt Linda could respond, Ethan walked in, sweaty from the yard work. He froze when he saw her, his expression hardening. "What's she doing here?" he asked, his tone icy. "She's here to ask us to drop the report," I said bitterly. Ethan's jaw clenched. "That's not happening. Your daughter's actions have consequences, Linda. She's not a victim here." Aunt Linda stood, her face flushed. "She's my daughter, Ethan. Of course, I'm going to fight for her. And I'm fighting for my wife," he shot back. "Hannah needs to stay away from us. Period." She left shortly after that, muttering something about how families should support each other. But Ethan and I both knew the truth. Hannah wasn't looking for support. She was looking for control. Later that week, we got a call from the police. They'd spoken to Hannah and issued a formal warning, but the officer had news we weren't expecting. "She admitted to everything," he said. "The photos, the texts, all of it. But there's something else you should know. She claims she's pregnant. She says it's Ethan's." My heart stopped. "That's impossible," I said, my voice trembling. The officer hesitated. "She claims they had an affair. I'm not saying it's true, but I wanted you to hear it from me before it comes up elsewhere." I hung up, my head spinning. Was this another one of Hannah's twisted lies? Or was there more to Ethan's story than he'd told me? The moment I hung up the phone, I turned to Ethan, who was standing in the living room, looking concerned. He could tell from my expression that something was wrong. "What did they say?" he asked cautiously. I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to steady my voice. "They said Hannah admitted to everything, the photos, the texts. But she's claiming—" My voice broke, and I had to force the words out. "She's claiming she's pregnant, and she says it's yours." Ethan's eyes widened in shock. "What? That's insane. She's lying. You know she's lying." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But the seed of doubt had already been planted. Hannah had done so much damage, and now this claim threatened to destroy what little peace we had left. Why would she say that? I asked, my voice cracking. Why would she go that far? Ethan stepped closer, his voice firm. Because she's desperate, and she wants to hurt us. She knows this is the one thing that could make you question me. But I swear to you, I have never, ever been unfaithful to you. Hannah is lying. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deceit, but all I saw was sincerity. Still, I couldn't shake the knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. The next day, we got another call from the police. They had requested proof of Hannah's pregnancy as part of their investigation, and as expected, she had none. She admitted under pressure that she wasn't actually pregnant, but had made the claim to force Ethan to talk to her. When the officer told me this, I felt equal parts relief and rage. Relief that her lie had been exposed, and rage that she had stooped so low to try to destroy my marriage. But Hannah wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I got a message from my Aunt Linda. It was a photo of Hannah in a hospital bed, looking pale and weak, with a caption, "Hannah tried to take her own life. Please don't give up on her." My stomach dropped. No matter how angry I was at Hannah, I didn't want her to harm herself. But part of me also questioned the timing. After everything, was this another ploy for attention? Ethan and I decided to visit the hospital, more out of obligation than anything else. When we walked into her room, Hannah looked up at us, her eyes red and puffy. "You came," she said softly, her voice trembling. "We're here because we're concerned," I said, keeping my tone even. "But Hannah, this has to stop. The lies, the manipulation, all of it. You need help." Tears streamed down her face, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of vulnerability in her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know why I did all those things. I hate feeling like I'm not enough. You have everything, and I have nothing. I wanted to hurt you because I thought it would make me feel better, but it didn't." Ethan crossed his arms, his expression cold. "Do you understand what you've put us through? What you've done to my wife? To our marriage?" Hannah nodded, sobbing harder. I know I've ruined everything, but I want to get better. I'm starting therapy. I promise I'll change." The next few months were quiet. Hannah stayed in therapy, and I avoided contact with her altogether. My aunt occasionally sent me updates, saying that Hannah was making progress, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Too much damage had been done. One day, Ethan sat me down. "What do you think about moving?" he asked. "Moving?" I repeated, caught off guard. "Yeah, somewhere far from here. Somewhere we can start fresh, without any of this hanging over us." The idea was tempting. A clean slate, away from Hannah and the chaos she had brought into our lives. But leaving felt like admitting defeat. "Do you think it's worth it?" I asked. Ethan took my hand. "I think you're worth it. I think our family is worth it. And I don't want her shadow hanging over us anymore." 6 months later, we moved across the country. We didn't tell anyone where we were going except for my parents, who fully supported our decision. Hannah tried to reach out a few times, sending emails apologizing and begging for forgiveness, but I ignored them. I wasn't ready to forgive her. I wasn't sure I ever would be. As time passed, the weight of her actions started to lift. Ethan and I focused on rebuilding our life together, free from her interference. And for the first time in years, I felt like we could finally breathe. Hannah may have tried to destroy us, but in the end, her actions only made us stronger. Epilogue. 2 years later, I got an unexpected letter from Hannah. It wasn't an apology. It was an acknowledgement of everything she had done. She admitted to the lies, the stalking, and the manipulation. But instead of asking for forgiveness, she said she hoped I could find peace. I never responded, because in the end, peace wasn't something she could give me. It was something I found for myself, far away from her and the chaos she left behind.